Hi dear students, last video we looked into what are the electrical activities that occurred in the smooth muscle, isn't it? What are the activities? The resting membrane potential at rest, it fluctuates to and fro between minus 45 to 65, and this is called as slow waves or basic electrical rhythm. This is one electrical activity, that is the resting membrane potential is not stable, it is fluctuating or oscillating. Second one is superimposed on this resting membrane potential. If it is stimulated by neuronal factors or neurotransmitters or hormones, it causes an excitation of the muscle or the action potential. So when the muscle is getting excited or an action potential is produced, it leads on to the muscle contraction. So you have the GIT smooth muscle contractile mechanisms. Different types of contractions occur in the GIT smooth muscle. What is the purpose? For the food to get mixed up, broken down, digested, and to get absorbed and passed on to the next part and to get excreted out. So today's class will be GIT smooth muscle contractile mechanisms. I am not going in detail about the contractile mechanism of the smooth muscle which is happening here. We will look into the types of contractions of GIT. So, but briefly, we look into the GIT smooth muscle contractile mechanism. As any other muscle, the smooth muscle here, which is a unitary smooth muscle, which functions as a syncytium, it has myosin and actin filaments sliding over one another to produce a contraction. And the hydrolysis of ATP is a must for this. Also, the relaxation includes the calcium magnesium ATPases and also the sarcoplasmic reticulum taking up the calciums. So, not in detail I am going, just brushing up. So here, what happens is the excitation contraction coupling. So whenever the muscle is excited, what happens is it causes influx of calcium. It can be through the stored calcium or from the intracellular stores, which causes the actin myosin sliding and causing mechanical contraction. So this is a picture of smooth muscle contraction. I just want you to know that an action potential is produced when the muscle is excited, a membrane potential is produced, action potential is produced. It causes more influx of calcium, mostly the long L type of calcium, voltage-rated calcium channels, and it causes muscle contraction. When the excitation is over, it causes a relaxation and there is no mechanical contraction. So what is the source for this contractile mechanism is the calcium. We know the calcium. What are the source of calcium is from the extracellular fluid. It can be from the caveoli. We knew that caveoli stores ECF fluid as well as calcium. It can be from the tightly packed attached to the cell membrane. It could be from the sarcoplasmic reticulum too, which is an intercellular store. So here you can see it can be from the extracellular calcium or from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The intracellular calcium increases, it binds with the calmodulin, and the myosin light chain kinase activation occurs here and it causes the actin myosin interaction to cause a mechanical contraction. So what are the types of smooth muscle contraction? One is rhythmic contraction or phasic contraction. That means it occurs at a particular time, okay? It occurs at a particular time, it winds off. It takes up, it gets excited, causes a contraction, then it goes off. Causes a contraction, goes off. So these are phasic contractions. Next one is a sustained contractions, that for a longer time, it is there for a longer time. This is called a sustained contraction. So now we will look into what is phasic contraction. So it is for the shorter duration. As I already told you, it is for the shorter duration. It is followed by the period of relaxation. So contractions are initiated by the spike potentials or the action potentials, which can occur in the singly or in a train of potentials. The intensity of the contraction or the strength or the force of contraction depends upon the number of spikes in the train. So you have a contraction frequency, that is depending upon the frequency of the slow waves. So what is the example for this phasic contraction is segmentation and peristalsis are the dominant forms of phasic activity. So segmentation and peristalsis are the dominant forms of phasic activity, and this is exhibited by your GIT track. So I want you to remember this. So here there is an example for the phasic contraction, that is segmentation. So at a particular time it causes a segmentation in one part, then another time there's next part. So this is segmentation contraction. So it doesn't cause a propulsion, it causes only mixing of the food. Second type of phasic contraction is peristalsis. You can see, you know already what is peristalsis, but here I will show you how it occurs. Okay, so if one part of the muscle is getting contracted, GIT muscle is getting contracted, and the food is propelled forward, okay, and subsequent segments get contracted and push the food towards the oral side. So this is example for the phasic contraction, peristalsis. So now what is tonic contraction? So in case of phasic contractions, you have the BER, the so electrical activity over which the action potentials are created, and it causes a phasic contraction. But in case of tonic contraction, it lasts for a longer hours and you don't need a BER. And the contraction replaces the spikes, and hormones and the calcium ions have a role in causing a tonic contraction. So here you can see how is the muscle tension here. So muscle tension is there. This is what we graphed here to the time, and here you can see the phasic contraction occurring and it going down. Muscle tension comes down, tension increases, it goes down. So this is phasic contraction. So there is a contraction period and relaxation, contraction period and relaxation. But what about tonic contraction? It stays for a longer time. So this is tonic contraction. So now we will look into the functional types of gastrointestinal movements. So functionally, how we can do. So one is the food should be propelled from one place to another, from the stomach, from the esophagus to the stomach, from the stomach to the intestine, small intestine, large intestine, and so on. So this is a propulsive movement, and this is being named as peristaltic contractions or peristaltic reflex contractions. Second one is a mixing movements or trituration or mixing and grinding. So it occurs like a mixing, okay, crunching. It occurs in a particular local parts of your GIT tract. So that is your mixing and grinding movements. Third one is local constrictive contractions, like a retropulsion. So one part giving contraction and puts to the second one, retropulsion, going back or going front at that particular place, that is a contraction. That is a local constrictive contractions. Or it could be a segmental contractions. So segments, this is the most common contractions in the intestine, and we already knew that, and it occurs a contraction like this, okay, in that particular part, causing a food to get broken down. So when you look into this retropulsion, I want to say a word that is, this is an important movement that occurs in your stomach. So now here, through this video, we will look into the digestive motility in this aspect. So the functional types of gastrointestinal movements, type 2 we can call it now, like that. What is happening during the digestive phase? So when the food is there, it got to get mixed up and it got to get propelled, okay? It got to get mixed up with the digestive juices, it got to get absorbed, digested, and then it got to push off. So the digestive phase motility includes your segmentation and your peristalsis. So the interdigestive phases, what is happening is, the food, after taking food, after the digestion has occurred and absorption has occurred, this food should be, whatever is remaining, should be cleared of your GIT tract. So the interdigestive motility includes your migrating motor complex and your hunger contractions. So digestive phase motility. So digestive phase motility includes, one is segmentation and two is peristalsis. So there is increased continuous activity whenever the food enters your oral cavity and then into your GIT tract. So the segmentation is also an important part, peristalsis is an important part. Other activities are secretion and absorption too. But here we will look only into the muscular parts. So your segmentation and your peristalsis. So here you can see, this is propulsive movement, food is pushed forward, and the segmentation movements which causes mixing of the food. So first one, now we will look into peristalsis. Under these headings, we will look what is peristalsis and we will understand what is peristalsis. So one is the definition, feature of peristalsis, frequency of peristaltic wave, force of peristalsis, mechanism of formation of peristaltic wave, peristaltic wave head mechanism on circular muscles and longitudinal muscles. What is this exactly? What is the law of gut and regulation and abolition of peristaltic waves? So first one is the definition. What is a peristaltic reflex? It is a reflex response that is initiated when the gut wall is stretched by the lumen of the contents. It occurs from all parts of the GIT, from esophagus to rectum. So here you can see the food is there which has initiated the peristalsis in that part. So what are the features of peristalsis? It is a propulsive movement. It passes the food towards the aboral end. So it is at a rate of 2 centimeters per second to 15 centimeters per second. It is a coordinated pattern of smooth muscle contractions and relaxations, where the wave of relaxation precedes the wave of contraction. So when the foot is passing down like this, okay, so here this contraction, the subsequent, the aboral end causes a relaxation. So it causes relaxation, relaxation, relaxation like this, okay. So this is a propulsion movement. The receiving end always relaxes ahead of the contraction. So there is a wave of contraction from the oral to the aboral side. So how is this produced? We knew that the basic electrical rhythm originates in the greater curvature of the stomach, and in the stomach the BER is at a rate of 3 to 4 per minute. So this is the base for the peristalsis to occur. So overimposed on this peristalsis occurred. So depolarization spikes are produced at the peak of the BER, resulting in mechanical contraction. So contraction of the circular muscles and the relaxation of the longitudinal muscles occurs ahead of the stimulus, and below the stimulus you have relaxation of the circular muscles and contraction of the longitudinal muscles. So here you can see the foot is there, okay. So what is happening is this is the receiving end and this is the contracting segment. So the circular muscles here contract and the longitudinal muscles relax, and here the circular muscles relax and the longitudinal muscles contract. So this is the direction of propulsion. This is oral to the aboral side. So what is the frequency of the peristaltic wave? So how many times it occurred? Okay, what is the rate? It depends upon the BER, it does not vary. So only the BER frequency is constant, we know already, and this is superimposed on the BER, that is your peristalsis. So how is the force of peristalsis affected? So we already know on the slow waves like this, you have the spike potentials. So if the number of spike potentials are more, then the force of contraction is more, or the strength of contraction is more. So it is regulated by the force of the spikes, that is number of spikes, and that is the mechanism of increasing your force of peristalsis. What are the factors that regulate the spikes? We already know the RMP fluctuation occurs, the slow waves, which is not affected by the neuronal or hormonal factors, but superimposed excitation, okay, with the sympathetic stimulation or the parasympathetic stimulation, or a gastric activity, gastrin activity or acetylcholine activity, or the mechanical stimuli like distension or a chemical stimuli can cause increase in the number of spikes, and this causes increase in the force of contraction. So what is the mechanism behind increasing the force of contraction? We know the number of action potentials if it is more, or the frequency of the action potentials if it is more, then it causes increase in the force of contraction. So we'll put it like this. So increase in the size of the slow wave plateau, increase in the entry of calcium from the extracellular fluid, release of more second messengers, release of calcium from sarcoplasmic reticulum. Maybe these are the ones because of the increase in the number of action potentials causing a increase in the force of peristalsis. So what happens here? So whenever there is food is there is stretch of the muscles, there is release of serotonin, there is activation of sensory neurons, which gives information to the myenteric plexus. So in the myenteric plexus, we know you have two types of neurons, which are ascending neurons and the descending neurons. So the ascending neurons are the ones which produces substance P and acetylcholine and causes smooth muscle contraction ahead of the foot, okay. And the receiving segment, that is the aboral end, having cholinergic neurons which are anterograde in nature, and the reserving neurons which producing the relaxing neurotransmitters like nitric oxide, VIP and ATP, causing a relaxation head of the stimulus. So this is a rough idea which I am telling you. The stretch, food is there, it causes stretch, there is a release of serotonin, information through sensory neurons goes to the myenteric plexus, and it causes the neurons of the myenteric plexus to get activated and release the neurotransmitters. So at the oral end it causes contraction, at the aboral end it causes relaxation. So if you have understood this concept, then we will go into detail in the next slide. So now we will go into this. So now imagine the food is here, okay. So the food is here. So what happens is the neurons must know that the food is there. So how this information is going? Most important one which mediates this information is your 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is it is a serotonin which is released from the enterochromaffin cells, and when it is secreted out from the enterochromaffin cells, when the food is there, the sensory neurons get stimulated. So there are two sensory neurons here which gives information that the food is there. One is from the chemical stimuli here, okay, it goes to the myenteric plexus, okay. Second one, there are sensory neurons in the longitudinal muscles which responds to stretch, and it also gives information to the myenteric plexus. So this is the myenteric plexus, this is enteric neurons. So the myenteric plexus are, which is between your muscle layer. What are the muscle layers in the GIT tract? The longitudinal muscle layer and the circular muscle layer. Also you have this myenteric plexus as well as your submucosal plexus, which is between your circular muscles and your mucosa. So when you look into the myenteric plexus, which is very important for the motility here, as we got to go much more clearer here. So what we have here is, these are the ascending neurons, okay, where the head is towards the caudal end, which secretes the neurotransmitters acetylcholine and substance P. And these are the descending neurons, okay, the head is towards the oral end, and these ones secrete the neurotransmitter VIP and nitric oxide. So now what happens whenever there is information from the sensory neurons from the mucosa as well as sensory neurons from the muscles, the information goes to the myenteric plexus. So in the myenteric plexus, ahead of the foot, that is at the oral end, what happens is the circular muscles contract because the descending neurons gives the neurotransmitters acetylcholine and substance P, which causes the circular muscles to contract. At the same time, the neurons, the descending neurons, okay, they give out VIP and nitric oxide, which relaxes the longitudinal smooth muscles. So ahead of the foot, you have contraction of the circular muscles and relaxation of your smooth muscles, longitudinal muscles. Behind the foot or at the aboral end or the caudal end, what happens is, there is relaxation of your circular muscles because it gets the information from your neurotransmitters, VIP and nitric oxide, and it causes relaxation. But at the same time, the longitudinal muscles is stimulated by the acetylcholine and substance P, and it causes a contraction. So when the foot is here, contraction of the circular muscle occurs and relaxation of the longitudinal muscles occurs. Below the foot, relaxation of the circular muscle occurs and contraction of your longitudinal muscles occur. So this is what is happening. So this is an important mechanism by which peristalsis occur. So peristaltic wave has a head mechanism of formation. Circular muscles and the longitudinal muscles are involved. So you have a contraction head and a relaxation head, which we already talked now. Some more neurotransmitters I'm adding up here. So in the contraction head, the circular muscles contract, we know, and it may be due to the substance P, acetylcholine as well as neurokinin A. And the relaxation of the longitudinal muscles occur. This is because of the nitric oxide, VIP, ATP, and PAC, that is pituitary adenyl cyclase activating polypeptides. This causes relaxation of your longitudinal muscle. At the relaxation head, okay, at the caudal end, what happens is you have the longitudinal muscle contraction because it is being influenced by your substance P, acetylcholine and neurokinin A. And the circular muscles relax, and this is because of the nitric oxide, VIP, ATP, and PAC. So not only this, so many other dilators are also there, that is relaxants are also there, but these are the most prominent and the important ones. So there is a propulsive movement, the peristalsis or the myenteric reflex, it is also called the peristalsis reflex. There is a propulsive movement. So you have a contraction ring and a receptive relaxation. So what is law of gut? So this there is the peristaltic wave always plus the direction of the movement always towards the anal end. This is called as law of gut. The other name for this law is law of intestine, polarity of the intestine, polar conduction of intestine, electrical activity of the intestine, law of gut, theory of receptive relaxation. So this was given by Starling in 1906. So this says, is it true? So if the peristalsis occurred, is it moving only towards the anal end? Actually, when the peristalsis is occurring, it occurs towards the oral end as well as towards the anal end. But the oral end stimulation dies off and only the upper end persists. So this is called as law of peristalsis. So contractions occur in both the directions, but the contraction head of the aboral end persists and the oral end dies out, and contraction traveling in the aboral direction persists. So this is called as law of gut. What is the proof behind this? How do you prove this? So what happens is when you cut the intestine, okay, and you tie it up, nothing happens. When you cut it and you reverse it and you tie it up, what happens is the peristalsis doesn't occur. So this is the proof that it passes from the oral end to the uporal end. So if this is the way of abolishing the peristaltic waves. So what are the regulating factors? You have the neuronal factors, hormonal factors and the mechanical factors. As we already knew, the action potentials are influenced by the neuronal factors, hormonal factors and the mechanical factors, and that is the one which influence your contractions too. So we knew it could be the extrinsic and the intrinsic neurons, or it could also the local hormones and the mechanical factors. Here I wanted to stress you one thing: the genesis of the impulses is independent of the extrinsic innervation. It is by the interstitial cells of Kagel which gives rise to your slow waves or the basic electrical rhythm, and superimposed on all these things is what your neuronal factors, hormonal factors and the mechanical factors act. This is what I want you to remember here. So what's retroperistalsis? When we talk about peristalsis, I want to give you an idea about retroperistalsis. What do you mean by this is, if an obstruction is occurring in the lumen, peristalsis moves in the backward direction, like vomiting. Okay, not only an obstruction, some like vomiting too. So this shows that movement can occur in the opposite direction too. This is called as retroperistalsis. So here is an example like vomiting, initiated by the neuronal factors or due to the stimulation of medullary vomiting centers, and a reverse peristalsis occurs or a retroperistalsis occurs. Next one is the segmentation. So we are talking about the digestive phase motility. One thing what we talked is peristalsis as well as reverse peristalsis or retroperistalsis. Now we will look into segmentation contraction. Segmentation contraction is the most common contraction seen in the intestine. So it is a dominant form in the intestine. So what happens here in the segmentation is, it is involving a local part of your small intestines and it causing a mixing of the contents. So this is important one. So circular muscles contract here and causes a grinding or a mixing of the food there, or the breaking of the food there. The adjacent muscles, circular muscles, are relaxed. So this is what is happening. There is a contraction, relaxation, and this is not moving. Actually, it is not moving the food forward. So this divides the segments, divide it into the segments. The relaxation and the contraction does not produce a forward movement. So what is the function? It causes mixing of the chyme with the juices and bringing them in contact with the mucosal surface. So now we come to the interdigestive phase motility. So they will include your migrating motor complex and hunger contractions. So this is an intermittent activity which is occurring in the GIT tract. So migrating motor complex and hunger contractions. So what is migrating motor complex? This also we can call it as a long peristalsis. So this occurs in between the meals. That is how we can talk it off. So during fasting, between the periods of digestion, the pattern of electrical activity and the motor activity in the GIT smooth muscles get modified so that the cycles of motor activity migrate from the stomach to the distal ileum. So the food is pushed, okay, whatever is remaining, okay, it's not actually the food, whatever the remains of the food which is there in the digestive tract gets pushed, okay, so that the tract is ready for the upcoming meal. So where does it origin? So it originates in the stomach, and you have the phases of the migrating motor complex. There is a quiescent period, there is a irregular activity, mechanical activity, as well as a burst of regular activity, the long peristalsis. So it starts, okay, and it lasts for 10 minutes. So what happens is a quiescent period is there, then irregular activity is occurring, then a regular activity is occurring. So these are the phases of migrating motor complex. So during the fasting state this occurs, and this is sweeping the contents, as I already told you. So this will occur every 1.5 hours, 1 hour to 1.5 hours, every 1.5 hours or 1 hour. It occurs in a cyclical pattern. Okay, when the food is there, then it stops. So this is a migrating motor complex. So this is at an interval of 60 to 90 minutes. The cycle is repeated and it lasts for 10 minutes. And it goes at a rate of 5 centimeters per minute. There is a close relationship between the BER and MMC. It is stopped by ingestion of the food and returns to the peristaltic and other BER and spike potentials. Say when the food is taken. So the activity is converted from MMC to your peristaltic contractions. So for the MMC to occur, the most important neurotransmitter is the motilin or the local hormone, GIT hormone. Motilin is very, very important in causing this contraction. So here you can see the M cells produce motilin, which is a local GIT hormone, and you can have a motilin-induced contraction. This is what they say when it is in the faster state, which initiates this MMC or a migrating motor complex. So what are the other factors that can inhibit the MMC activity? Is some of the factors, it can be physiological as well as pathological, like you see chewing gum, snacking and grazing, myofunctional tissues like poor tongue, posture, thyroid dysfunction, HPA axis dysfunction, brain injury, blood sugar swinging, vagus not properly transmitting, like starving good bacteria with low fiber diet, large intestinal pathologies, stevia, high levels of anti-CBT and anti-vinculin antibodies, so many factors. So to get an idea, I'm telling you this, MMC can be stopped, not just feeding, also pathological conditions can cause the MMC. So here, so it is sweeping. So this is what I wanted to remember here. So here, what is the exact function is uncertain, but we knew that it clears the stomach of the small intestine of the luminal containing preparation for your next meal. Maybe it causes a bile, gastric and pancreatic juice secretion too. Also, it inhibits the migration of colonic bacteria into the intestine. So most important function is, it is the interdigestive housekeeper or your sweeper of your gut. Next one is hunger contractions. So what is a hunger contraction? You're feeling hungry, there is pain in the stomach, you feel that pain. So what they say is, it may be the peristaltic contractions of the empty stomach, but more prominently we can say the phase 3 of MMC is the one which is responsible for the hunger contractions. Not only this, the hypothalamus, we know you have the ventral hypothalamus and so on, which is a hunger areas, and also hunger initiating areas as well as satiety areas present in the hypothalamus. And there is neuronal influence, okay, the sympathetics and the parasympathetics having a neuronal influence. So the vagus having an influence over this, as well as the local hormones of the GIT, as well as ghrelin, leptin, all these hormones may play a role. There is an interaction between all these things, and this causes the MMC or the contractions. So this is the hunger contraction, is when the stomach is empty, you have the contractions. And this is your hunger contractions. These increase in intensity over time. When they become very fused, they become tetanic contraction, and it may be very, very painful. So with the other psychological factors, you feel the sensation of hunger. So we got to know about the hypothalamus, we got to know about the neuronal input, you got to remember the vagus as well as your hormones like ghrelin, leptin, as well as your local GIT hormones. So GIT reflexes. In another video, we talked in detail about the GIT reflexes, but I wanted to give you the most important division or categories of GIT reflexes. So here what I have shown you is an information going from the plexus to the target cell from the stomach, and here also from the vagal medullary center playing an important role. Okay, so now we had vagus, I told you about the vagus. So now we can divide these reflexes into short reflexes and long reflexes. Short reflexes are enteric reflexes, okay, which occurs locally in the intestine. So there is a local segment, the enteric neurons are there between the longitudinal muscles and circular muscles, as well as between the circular muscles and the submucosa, and this causes an interaction. Even when the food is there, the chemicals are there, the distension is there, locally it causes more secretion or decrease in secretion or increase in motility or decrease in motility. So these are short reflexes which are confined to the enteric reflexes because of the interneurons and so on. Second one is the long reflexes. Long reflexes means whatever is happening in the GIT tract, information passes through the vagus, goes to the brainstem, again coming through the afferents of the vagus. When you look into the vagus, 80% of the fibers of the vagus are afferent fibers. Okay, so it has both afferent fibers and efferent fibers. These are called as long reflexes. So this is one division. Second division is we can call within the gut, which is the local reflexes. Second one is of the second division. Second one is whatever is happening in the gut, it is transmitted to the sympathetic nerve. Again, the sympathetic chain coordinates and gives information to the gut to be what to be done. Examples of these include your gastrocolic reflex, enterogastric reflex, colonoileal reflex. What is gastrocolic reflex? So when the food is there in the stomach, okay, it gives information to the colon to empty. You can see in the children, okay, whenever they take food, they empty their colon, defecate, they defecate. So this is called as gastrocolic reflex. It says that the food is coming, you empty the colon. Second one is the introgastric reflex. That is information going from the small intestine to the stomach to say, don't empty into me. So the ileum is here, or the duodenum is there, ileum is there, stomach is there. When it is filled up with food, okay. So what happens is when the intestine is filled up with food, okay, when it doesn't want the stomach to empty more into the intestine. So the enteral reflexes, the neurons goes from the ileum or the duodenum to the stomach and it tells that don't empty. So this is called as enterogastric reflex. We can also have colonoileal reflex. What is colonoileal reflex? So information coming from the colon to the ileum. Okay, so if the colon is filled up, it tells information to the ileum, please don't empty into me. So that is called as colonoileal reflex. So next one is the reflexes which is occurring from the gut to the spinal cord or to the brainstem. Then again it is coming to the gut and modulates the activity and ensures a reflex activity there. So one is duodenogastric reflex. From the duodenum, information goes to the stomach and says, I am filled up, don't empty into me. This is duodenogastric reflex. Next one is all the pain reflexes goes to the brainstem, and also defecation reflex is also an example for the axis which is coordinated through the spinal cord or on your brainstem. So thank you. Thanks for the patient listening. For the applications or the pathologies regarding the motility disorders, we will go into the next video. Thank you.